So as far as examples go, when you sit down to work out a problem, let's say we've already done the definitions, we've already done the demonstration part, we've watched some examples on YouTube, and now it's really time for the actual tutoring part of your tutoring session. This is where you get to shine, tutors. So the part one, there's two parts to this. Part one is explain it, show it, and coach it. And I'll show you what I mean by that. When you sit there and you have an example, let's say math or chemistry, I'm just going to use math and chemistry as examples for practice problems, but this applies across the board to anything that you're tutoring. You want to first explain it, explain how to solve the problem to the student. That's first and foremost, they need to get an explanation of how to solve the problem. And then you work an example. See, here's that word example coming into play right here. Work an example problem for the student to watch. And just let the student watch you work an example problem so they kind of get the gist of what you're doing. Now, when you do that, don't fly through it, even if it's easy for you, and just do an example really quickly just to be impressive, just to look how smart I am and impress the student. You want to go step by step and explain what you're doing as you're doing it. Explain the steps. You want to explain in detail exactly what you're doing when you're doing it, when you're working this example problem for them. And then after that, you have the student try one with you coaching them along. So have the student try one, but as the student is doing it, what do? You explain the steps again. So you're going to be explaining the steps 3 times. The first time is up here on A, you explain how to solve the problem. You explain the steps. And then B, you work an example for the student to watch, and while you're working the example, you explain the steps. And then C, you have the student try an example problem, and while the student is trying the example problem, you coach them along by, yes, explaining the steps. Now for part 2, part 2 is going to be try it, do it, and explain it. And this is for the student to do. That first part, part 1, was for the tutor to do. Now this is for the student to do. So after you coach them through a problem, and remember when you're coaching them through a problem, what are you doing? What does coaching mean? You're explaining the steps as they work the problem. So after you do that, give them another problem and have the student do one on their own. So you're going to give the student a similar problem. But while the student is working on that problem, they're just not going to sit there in silence and work the problem. The student is going to explain it back to you as they work the problem. So now the student is explaining the steps as they work the problem. If you want more information on that, check out my other video on the 4 core learning processes, and that's going to go into a little bit more detail on working an example and explaining the steps to the student. Now for the last tent pole, we have organize. Organize your notes and organize your thoughts. So if you organize your notes, you will organize your thoughts. And if your thoughts are organized, then your notes should be organized. So if you are a tutor and you're seeing a student with a whole bunch of disorganized, scattered notes everywhere and they can't find anything, and it takes them 10 minutes to find where they wrote that or where this or that was in the text or in the notes, then you're looking at a student who does not have an organized system for their notes. And if they do not have an organized system for their notes, their thoughts in this subject are not going to be organized either. Now, different material, just depending on what you're studying, different materials, so, math, chemistry, biology, English, etc. Different material requires different types of organization. And it's not just the entire subject. It depends on what you're studying in that subject. For instance, in anatomy and physiology, we have to learn the blood flow through the heart and out to the lungs, and then back to the heart and out to the body, and then back to the heart. We have to know that entire blood flow. Well, there's different ways you can organize your notes that explains that blood flow, and I'll show you an example of that here in a minute, and you'll be able to see that certain types of organization are better than others depending on the material that you're trying to learn. But some of the ways you can organize your notes, there are flow charts, and that's when you're like, this thing happened, and then a little arrow, and then this happened, and then a little arrow, then this happens, and then an arrow, then this happens, and then a little equal sign arrow, and you get the result. So flowcharts. Or you can have outlines, and outlines is like a main topic, and then one, your first point, and then little a is a detail, and then 2 is your second point, and then little a is a detail, and you get the idea. So that's an outline, and then you go to B, which is your next main topic. Or you can draw concept maps. So concept maps are a way you can like brainstorm, or you can start in the middle. It kind of looks like a little spider. You have the middle, and here's the main idea, and then you have little branches off of this, which gives you points. Here's a point, here's a point, here's a point. So these are points. And then off of here you have little details. So you can draw this little spider thing, and these are called concept maps, which will organize your thoughts. And then you have compare and contrast charts, where you just list a chart of, something A, product A and product B, and then underneath it you just fill in how they're alike and how they're different. And so I'll show you examples of all 4 of these. So flowcharts. So this is what I was talking about with the arrows. And if you notice, just to bring this back up, I color-coded my notes. So blood circulation in the heart. So we're going to start, and then it comes in through the superior and inferior vena cava and into the right atrium of the heart. And then there's a little arrow, and there's through the tricuspid valve, and then through the right ventricle, and then through the pulmonary semilunar valve, into the pulmonary trunk, into the pulmonary arteries, and into the respiratory system, where it picks up oxygen and turns red. So from the respiratory system, we have the pulmonary, it goes into the pulmonary veins, which, here's the arrow, so it goes into the heart, into the left atrium, and so on and so forth. And then, as you can see down here, I have a little equal sign into the systemic circulatory system. So that's the result of this journey that the blood has taken through all of these tubes. So outlines. So as you can see, I took the same information and I put it into the form of an outline. Now, so if you read this, this isn't going to be near as effective to demonstrate where the circulation goes, where the blood flows, and when through the heart and the lungs, because it's just in an outline form. So I'm just hitting point by point by point. So here's the first one. There's 4 chambers in the heart. There's the left atrium, left ventricle, right ventricle, and there's 2 types of valves. There's the AV valves and there's the semilunar valves. And under the AV valves are between each atrium and ventricle, and there's a tricuspid and a bicuspid, and the semilunar valves are between each ventricle and the connecting artery. So there's the pulmonary semilunar valve and the aortic semilunar valve. So this is a good way to spell out the anatomy, just the anatomical regions of the blood circulation in the heart, but it doesn't do the same job that the flow chart does, because the flow chart actually says where the blood goes before and after. It goes here, then it goes there, then it goes another place, and so on. So of course the flow chart, I think, would be better to memorize the journey, the pathway that the blood goes on when it circulates through the heart. The outline is going to be useful for other material that you're studying. And here's a concept map. And again, I took blood circulation in the heart and I made a concept map out of it. So here's the top information right here. The circulation through the heart, and there's 4 chambers. There's the atrium chambers and there are the ventricle chambers, and there's 2 each of these. So there's the right atrium and the left atrium. There's the right ventricle and the left ventricle. And then the blood that goes into the left atrium goes through the bicuspid valve into the left ventricle and through into the aorta and out into the body. The blood that goes into the right atrium goes through the tricuspid valve up to the right ventricle, follow these blue lines, over to the lungs where it turns red because it gets oxygenated, over to the left atrium, and then again we're back to where we were in the first place. We go through the bicuspid valve to the left ventricle to the aorta and out to the body. And then from the body uses up all the oxygen, and so the blood turns blue now. So from the body, we follow this up to the superior and inferior vena cava, which goes into the right atrium of the heart. And we follow this chain of events all the way through again. So this is kind of a concept map and a flow chart combined. Now, compare-contrast charts is just exactly what it sounds like. If you see up here, I have pulmonary circulation in one column, and I have systemic, which means all throughout the body circulation, in another column. So here are all the anatomical regions that the blood goes through for pulmonary circulation. Here on the right column are all the anatomical regions the blood travels through for systemic circulation. So as you can see, this is comparison and contrast. Like at the very top, pulmonary circulation comes in from the superior and inferior vena cava, but in systemic circulation it comes in from the pulmonary vein, and so on and so forth. So of course you don't need to, if you're not an anatomy and physiology tutor, you don't need to know all this, so I'm not going to go through it step by step. But as you can see, this is a compare and contrast chart, and this is a great way, especially, and I'll tell you a little trick, for microbiology, this is a great way to study comparison and contrast charts, because microbiology, half of biology is just organizing the microbes that you're studying. And if you can organize them in a compare-contrast chart, then you're on your way there. You're halfway to an A already. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate all you tutors for everything that you're doing and what you're going to do this upcoming semester. You are welcome to check out my YouTube channel. I have videos on there for anatomy and physiology, for math, for chemistry, and if you'd like to see anything go up on my YouTube channel, any tutorial videos, please don't hesitate to contact me and let me know. I'd be happy to do it. Thank you again, and have a great day.